welcome everybody that's on the call. Thank you for joining us today. We're here today to present our our Excel at Work series with Cynergy. So the topic today is 10 tips for how small businesses can beat COVID-19, embracing adaptability, empathy, and action. So a little bit about Cynergy, and I'll have Kendra, my co-chair, introduce the current speakers today. Cynergy is a group of young-minded professionals that is looking to help grow their network, as well as events like these to help better understand how we can help each other in the business world and things of that nature. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to my co-chair, Kendra, and she can explain, introduce the speakers, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so we're really excited to have two new speakers that we haven't had before from Marshall Communications, both Emma and Kat. So it's kind of fun to have two speakers too. We haven't had that in a while. So first, Emma, she does a lot for Marshall Communications. She does a lot of copywriting and social media and graphic design. And she is able to juggle multiple clients at once, which is always a skill that I'm looking for. And she loves to keep up to date with the changing social media trends and insights, because we all know that there's another app every day. So that's very useful. And then Kat is recently joined to Maine about 4 years ago from North Carolina, so welcome. And she focuses on strategic planning, social media marketing, and copywriting as well. And Kat, I love in your bio, it says, Kat seeks to embrace each day with optimism, inquisitiveness, and a strong work ethic. So I love that. So welcome, guys. Take it away.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. So as Peter said, we're going to be presenting the 10 tips for how your small business can beat COVID-19 by embracing adaptability, empathy, and action. So back on Friday, March 13th, kind of ironically, we started to see small businesses and institutions shut down because of COVID-19 in order to protect their employees and the community. And then over this time, we've also seen some social justice topics come up, such as the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's also something that we have to keep in mind as we're emerging from this pandemic. Now that we're starting to kind of enter a recession, businesses are starting to reopen in order to avoid long-term failure. So today we're going to be talking about a few tips for how to emerge from COVID-19. And while we go through those tips, we're going to be giving a few local business spotlights, as well as a few tips or best practices for things like social media and email newsletters. Then as we close up our presentation, we're going to be giving you an ebook that covers all of the tips that we talked about. It also has checklists for actionable items that you can take. And then we'll be answering your questions. So throughout the presentation, just use the Q&A feature and we'll answer those questions at the end. And we'll also be providing our contact information in case you have any questions in the future or just want to connect with us. So Kat, take it away.
All right, thank you. So our first tip here is to keep the tribe vibe strong. And by that, we mean to really keep connected to the network and audience that you've built over the years. Maintaining those connections during this time is key, even though it can be tricky. So keep your network updated on changes and pivots in your business, even if they're seemingly small. I think during this time, over communication is better than under communicating, and really let people into your business's life, even that if it's virtually. And utilize technology in this case. That's going to be your best friend in keeping connected with the folks that you've built over the years. And a great example of this would be the Kenebec River Brew Fest. So typically they have a live event in Mill Park, but of course this year things looked a little different. But rather than abandoning those existing connections that they had built with their community of breweries and beer enthusiasts in the community, they curated beverage boxes in place of the live event, which was really cool, utilizing local wines, ciders, and beers. And they were able to get a lot of interest from that community in a virtual way. And they focused a lot on Facebook, updating availability of the products when they were released, and letting people know when they sold out. And the results were really stellar on this. What started as a live event and became a virtual event, all rounds of these boxes were sold out in a number of hours. So it was really successful, and they were able to utilize that network that they had built in a new creative way. And that brings us to our second tip, which is to embrace technology for your new customers and your existing network. And there's a couple of methods to that. Email newsletters can be a good one. Social media. We'll talk about customer chat, podcasts, and webinars. And so the first of those, we have some best practices here for email newsletters. So the first step would be, of course, to evaluate if it's needed at all based on your business's goals, if it's sales or is it retention. Email newsletters work really well for retaining your consumers and kind of keeping your network strong by kind of people are already have a interest in your business, and the newsletter can help retain that. So that the second best practice is to keep it pretty focused rather than having disjointed parts. So really focus on something and try not to have too many parts to the puzzle. We know people's attention spans aren't super long these days, so best to keep it focused. And third tip is to really favor the educational over the promotional. So we definitely, while it might be tempting to include your latest sales and discounts in a newsletter, think of it as a way to educate people on what's new and interesting and get them interested in your services or business. And then on the subscribe page, you'll want to set expectations about what readers should expect. So how many days of the week you'll be sending it, that kind of thing, just so people are aware of what they're signing up for and will be less likely to unsubscribe when they sign up. Another idea here is that you'll want tempting subject lines. So of course you'll want people to open the email. I know that everyone probably receives so many emails every day, and we delete probably half of it without them. So it'll be important to have something that is engaging and encourages people to open it. And then finally, this kind of goes along with the keep it focused idea, is you'll want one primary call to action. So whether that's to visit the website or follow you on social media or whatever the end goal of the newsletter is, should be clear. And ideally you'll have a CTA button at the end of the newsletter, just being really clear and pointing people towards that.
All right, so the next section of our second tip is the best practices for social media. So what you want to do is navigate through the different social media platforms that you use for your business. You want to take a look at what people are posting about, the different conversations that people are having on social media, as well as what other businesses are doing to share with their audience what they're doing as they emerge from the pandemic. After taking a look at the conversations and gathering a few ideas, you can strategize what you want to do to connect with your audience. Now, your voice may be a bit different now than it was before the pandemic and even during the pandemic as we emerge. So you just want to make sure you find the right voice for your audience and the message that you're trying to get across. In that, you also want to use the right tags and hashtags. So if you're working with other businesses in the community, you want to make sure that you're tagging them, and you also want to use the right hashtags. So you may be using some of the same hashtags that you were using before the pandemic or during the pandemic, but you also want to use the more timely and relevant hashtags. So maybe hashtag COVID-19, or like the social movement hashtags for either Black Lives Matter or the LGBTQI community hashtags. Depends on what you're posting about and what social issues you're showing support for. You also want to use your tools. So a great tool that social media has is the insights and analytics tools. So whichever platform you're on, you're going to want to check out those tools and see when your audience is engaging with your posts. Because everyone's schedules have changed, the times that people interact with your posts or your page may be different now. So you may want to start posting at a different time. You also want to look at how people are engaging with your posts, whether it's likes or comments, just to figure out what posts are resonating with them and how you can really connect with them. And so ideally, this will all save you time, but you still want to make sure you're monitoring, responding, and creating conversation with your audience. You don't want to make a post and then just leave the social media platform alone for a week. You want to make sure that you're returning and looking at the comments and responding to the comments and direct messages to create conversation and make sure everyone is on the same page and knows what is going on. So we think a good example of embracing technology and using social media to do so is the Truck Across Maine. The Truck Across Maine had been considering a virtual ride for a few years now, but this pandemic really made it the right time for them to implement some of the ideas that they had been thinking about for this virtual ride over the past few years. And this gave an opportunity to people all around the country and even the world to participate in this event that they may not have normally been able to participate in. So to continue the conversation and create more of a community, even though people weren't actually physically together, the Truck Across Maine shared their leaderboards on social media and created a Where Do You Ride campaign or contest. So people could submit their photos and they would share them with their social media network.
Another great example of a business that's embraced technology and utilized social media is the Maine State Museum. So of course, during COVID, the question comes up of how does a museum keep being a museum? And we think they were very creative about this. They did a lot of YouTube exhibits. You can see one on the right here. And they also did downloadable at-home activities related to those exhibits. So they kept that hands-on approach. And also it was helpful to children that were stuck at home without school. So they thought of that. And then they had webinars for educators. So on a similar note, they were able to share tips and resources for educators that were presenting things online. And I did just see that someone was having some audio issues. Is everyone able to hear me okay? Let's see. Give everyone a moment. Emma, you hearing me okay?
Yes, I can hear you all right.
All right, well, we can move on. Okay, thank you. Hopefully that person will work out right for them. Sorry about that.
All right, so our next section of embracing technology in tip 2 is podcasts. So with podcasts, you can either appear on someone else's podcast or create your own. But the whole idea of using a podcast during this time is to communicate with your audience. So you really want to make sure when you're going to appear on someone else's podcast that that podcast reaches the audience that you are targeting, or the audience that you already reach. But when you create your own audience, you may have to start from the ground up and build that audience over time. So while sharing information and communicating with your audience over podcast, you just want to give them an idea of what your business is doing to emerge from this pandemic as you're reopening. So letting them know maybe some of the safety practices you're taking into account, your updated hours, and where they can find contact information for you. You can also share on a podcast what you have done in order to help other businesses that may be in the same situation. And you can also listen to general business podcasts or industry-specific podcasts. Instead of sharing what you've done, you can find out what other businesses are doing that could help you emerge from this situation. And when you are looking for podcasts, you can either Google it or use Apple Podcasts to search for different topics. And that way you can find some podcasts that really align with what you're trying to do with your business and reaching your audience. So a good example of this is the PR Maven podcast. So a few weeks ago, Nancy did a special episode to help her audience through the pandemic. And she started out by explaining what was happening and the impact to businesses. And then she gave gratitude to her listeners for tuning in and paying attention to the information that she was giving. And then she went on to give a few tips about how to communicate with your audience. So this was a great example of what to do during the pandemic in order to communicate with your audience. It can also be used while emerging, so you can continue that conversation and letting people know what's going on.
And we also have webinars on here, which obviously we're doing a webinar right now. They can be helpful to your business, and they are primarily for B2B businesses, but there's benefits for B2C as well. So if you haven't considered one, maybe consider doing one. They can help generate leads. In fact, 58% of B2B businesses implement webinars as part of their marketing strategy. And it's a nice way to showcase your value. So it's very engaging and low cost to make. So it could be a nice thing to try to gain a new audience or engage your current audience. And then finally, customer chat and how it could help your business. So before I go on, a few statistics here. 79% of consumers prefer live chat because it offers instant responses and it has the highest consumer satisfaction rate. And for consumers, it really satisfies them because people want a response right away, and it feeds into that digital multitasker's lifestyle. So instead of holding on the phone and listening to that old music, you might be emailing and have your chat window up about some products and services from a business that you have a question about. So it really helps and encourages people to stay on your website and to get their questions answered in a flexible way that works for them. And for you, kind of what I was saying earlier, it does keep people on your website longer, which is always ideal. And that's an opportunity to engage, sell, and upsell. So as people are actively browsing your website, you can be discussing with them potential products and services, and that increases your buyer's confidence because they have that direct interaction. And then it's also quite smart because at this point in time, only large businesses, or not only, but primarily large businesses like Amazon or Target are implementing these customer chat features. There's not a lot of small businesses that have done it. So it could really help differentiate your business and give you that competitive edge.
All right, now for tip 3, how to touch your customers without actually touching them. So here we're talking about brand touch. Your customers are going to crave that brand touch now that we've been living in a touchless society for the past few months. So they're going to want to feel appreciated. Using their name, taking into consideration their feedback, and having conversations with them can really make them feel appreciated. They're also going to want to experience your offerings, and if you are opening your physical location, they're going to want to experience what it's like to enter your store or office again. They're going to want to touch your merchandise as well. So maybe you want to make sure you're offering them hand sanitizer or wiping down commonly used surfaces more often. Making eye contact is also very important for brand touch because now that most people are wearing masks, you don't get the as many facial cues as you would normally because you can only see each other's eyes. So making eye contact, even if it's just through Zoom or if you are in person, is still very important for giving that brand touch and making that connection. And you also want to bring joy and ensure safety. So maybe giving examples of ways people can give back to their community, or offering posting about or putting up signs about how you're taking their safety into consideration and what you're doing to keep them safe is going to create a memorable and pleasant experience because they are able to take their minds away from the more serious issues, as well as make sure they're staying safe and healthy. So a good example we found of this last tip especially is Kenebec Savings Bank. So to keep people safe, Kenebec Savings Bank is offering information about their coronavirus response and their drive-up service right on their homepage. So it's very easy to find. So that lets people know how they can stay safe while visiting one of their branches. They're also posting on social media about ways to avoid coronavirus scams. And just another way, they're ensuring that their customers are staying safe. And they're also bringing joy, either by offering fun or delicious ways to support the community during this hard time. So one of their campaigns was the KSB Eats Local campaign that they were doing on their social media. And in this, they would spotlight a local restaurant and share their hours and information about the business so that people could go out and support that business and find joy in doing so.
And then our tip 4 here is add a little love to the world. So we know, of course, it's a time of upheaval and distress. So use your business to infuse sensitivity and empathy into everything you do. So across all channels, that's something to consider on your social media, your website, your in-person interactions, even in a mask, as Emma was speaking about. Store windows, as simple as a nice sign. I've seen some great signs that sort of take into account that we're all going through something tough, but we're in it together. And if possible, consider giving profits to programs or organizations. That can be a powerful action. So a great example think is Kushnov Brewing Company. They have a real heightened sense of awareness and sensitivity to the current landscape. And they're taking a position of empathy for others through their business and their products. So they have this beer they're offering called Black is Beautiful, and the proceeds of it go to the NAACP Defense Legal Funds. And it's a larger program that many breweries are taking part in, and it's given them a platform to take a position on the issue, and I think that's a powerful statement. And then through the months of June, they also had Pride Pie Pizza for Pride Month. So I thought that was a nice nod through their product offering to add love and empathy into the world and to just have that awareness of the time and place. We thought they were doing an excellent job of that. And this is all laid out on their social quite nicely as well.
So tip number 5 is to take a fresh look at your marketing plan. Your pre-coronavirus plan probably won't work for you now because so much has changed over the past few months. So what you want to do is redefine your business goals. So before, maybe you were focusing more on sales, but now you want to focus more on connecting with your audience. So maybe you want to go over to social media and focus on creating conversations and engaging your audience and connecting that way. That way you can also have quantifiable goals that you can reach through engagements, the way you interact, how many people are reached by your posts, other data like that. And you're also going to want to reallocate your investments to digital. Even though we are kind of re-entering that physical world, digital is still very important, especially as the virus continues and in case we have another round that causes us to kind of close up again. So having an e-commerce element to your website can be extremely helpful for the future, as well as people who aren't really willing to or don't want to go out in public yet. They can purchase your product or service online instead of having to wait until it's safe to go out again. And then you're going to want to focus on social media too. As fewer people are going out, it's harder to have in-person conversations. So making sure you continue that conversation on social media is important to keep your brand top of mind. And then for your marketing plan, you also want to keep in mind that people are still going to be working remotely. So maybe not talking about going into work or going into the office in your marketing plan. So like if you're a coffee shop, you may not want to say something about picking up a coffee on your way to work. You may still want to use some other tactics even as we kind of come out of this crisis.
And then tip 6 here is make it easy for people to find you and to pay you. So of course, I think you obviously want to be searchable and ensure that your contact information is easily found from a simple Google search. And your contact information is consistent on Google, your website, and your social page. And then to pay you, it's a great idea at this time to think about touchless payment methods if you haven't already. So Venmo, Apple Pay, and more. I know I really value that when I go to a store and I don't have to physically sign anything. I value that and it makes me feel safer. And they're simple to implement. So take a look at it if you haven't already. And then a business spotlight here is Traverse Coffee. So they are quite easily searchable. So they come up, that image in the upper right comes up when you search for it on Google, and they have their hours and contact information quite easily found. And it's consistent across platforms. So I noticed they had updated their hours on Instagram, and it was already reflected on the website and on Google. So those small things can just make it easier for people that already might be more nervous to come in. They just feel confident in your hours and know when you're actually open. And something nice here, specifically on their website, they had the founder's name listed. You can see in the bottom, Kyle. So that was just a nice touch. We thought it adds a nice personal touch, kind of goes back to that add a little love to the world feeling, that we're all in this together, and adding a person's name is kind of a nice positive impact there.
All right, tip 7 is to stay up to date. So COVID-19 is not all we have to worry about anymore, but you want to start small by making sure your phone number, hours, and safety precautions or policy changes can easily be found on your social media, your website, or Google. And you also want to, now taking on more of a bigger task here, is show that you care. So showing your viewpoint and providing support, especially with the virus and how it's been impacting people, as well as the social justice movements that have come up along the way. So staying up to date is very important on these issues, because you don't want to look like you're out of touch, because then it may seem like you don't care, and that's certainly something that you don't want. So a good example of this is Kenebec. So when you Google them, their hours and appointment scheduling for each of their branches pops right up. So that makes it really easy to find and stay updated on the different hours that they have as they begin to reopen. And they've also been posting on social media about inclusion and diversity in addition to COVID-19. So as you can see in these examples, one post is about diversity and equality during Pride Month. And then the next one is how people can learn more about the safety precautions they're taking as they open their branches and lobbies back up. And then tip 8 is to share your safety measures. So you continually want to keep up with the changing health and safety practices. And you want, as you do that, you want to let your audience know what is going on. So you might want to ask some of these questions. What are your customers required to do as they enter your physical location? What measures are you taking to keep them safe? And how are you sharing that information on how you're keeping them safe with them? What platforms are you using? And then you also want to ask your customers to give feedback. So find out how you can improve on these tactics that you're implementing. Ask what your customers like or dislike about how you're handling the situation and their safety.
And tip 9 here is to promote an unplugged world. I know this is something that I need to work on myself, because clearly after and during this time, people are, we call it digital weariness. So we've been on social media. We know that social media time spent on screen time is at an all-time high at this point. We know that people are on Netflix more than ever. And we know that people are looking forward to kind of getting away from it all. So if your brand can offer that, definitely take advantage of it. And it seems kind of ironic to say it, even if you're showing getting away from it all online, on your website or on social, do it, because it can be a really motivating factor for people in that digital weariness phase. So next example of that here would be Arboretum, and they really utilize Facebook to showcase the natural beauty and wildlife on their property. So whether that's showing, a monarch butterfly shedding its skin, or just a nice peaceful moment of calm of a waterfall. It's almost meditative in a way, and it kind of offers a nice breath of air on your social feed. And I think that's something that people are attracted to during this time. We know that people are trying to go on hikes more. So if you can show that off digitally, definitely consider doing it.
And then our final tip 10, is that there's a new sense that life is short. People are finding a new sense of urgency. So you want to be aware of that, and you want to avoid wasting people's time with excessive paperwork or sign-up forms. You really want to make it as simple as possible so people can get back to their day-to-day lives and what's really important right now. You also want to personalize service. So making sure you're using their name and paying attention to their preferences and making the changes based on their feedback. And then you also, as you should be doing already, treat them with kindness and respect. That is really needed during this time. And then you also want to target the right audience. So over the past few months, your typical audience may not need your services now like they did before. So an example of this is travel. People traveling from a different country may not be coming here now, but you still want to be giving them inspiration. And then you may have gained a whole new audience. So for example, chefs teaching people who are staying at home how to cook. Over the pandemic, a lot of people have become interested in bread making. So the people who have written books or have YouTube channels or offer courses in cooking have been more popular because more people are staying at home and can't go out to restaurants. So they've wanted to learn how to cook more at home. And then your audience may need you more now than they have ever needed you before. An example of this is internet providers servicing people working from home. Now that people are doing their jobs digitally, completely from home, it's important that internet service providers are making sure that their customers have a good internet connection so they can actually get their work done. So that's an audience that they may want to pay more attention to now than they would have before.
And if you're interested in more actionable ideas, we do have an ebook for CEO Nancy Marshall. And it's a great resource. It kind of bundles everything we've said in a nice pack. And there's additional information in there as well. So I believe the presentation will be sent out to you following the presentation. Click on that link. You can get it right there. So thank you so much for listening in. If you want to connect with us, our information is below each of our pictures. And if you have any questions, you might have had some throughout the presentation, we will be happy to answer those now.
Do you see the question by Renee?
Let's see, I see.
So yeah, so it says, do you have any recommendations for resources on learning to create a podcast?
I'll let Emma answer that one.
I don't have any that I can give you right now. But if you just give me an email after, I can gather up some of the resources that we've used with the PR Maven podcast that can really help. I know Nancy has talked a lot about the book Profitable Podcasting. So that might be one that you want to check out and learn from when starting a podcast.
Thanks, Emma.
Let's see. Do you see any more?
I don't see any more questions.
I don't either.
Okay. So it sounds like you guys are really accessible, though, that if someone does have a question, I think it's always when we end that people have questions. But thank you so much. This was really informative, and you guys really jam-packed your time with us. And thank you for that, you know, presentation that you're going to send to us with Katie. So I think this is a really great asset for people, and you really did have a lot of tips in here. So great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to Nancy for allowing you guys to do this for us too.
Oh yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys. I think we're going to finish up. If you have any questions, please reach out to Emma or Kat and or us, Katie, Peter, or Kendra, and we can connect you with what you need. All right. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.